Welcome to The Real Recipe, the podcast that brings you the perfect blend of real estate trends and topics, where we serve up fresh insights and sizzling strategies. So let's get cooking. So we're here for another episode. Today's an interesting one. Today is, but I feel like we say that all the time, because aren't all of them interesting? I think some of them are interesting. More interesting than others.
Feeling more interesting because you got the elderberry shot today.
Yes.
Everyone had their wellness shots when they came to the office.
Because somebody's not feeling good. So we have to have...
So everyone had to come in here and be subject to drinking all the
we have to boost our
gross health tonics that I drink every day.
But they're supposed to be good for you.
They are good for you. I never get sick.
Don't see, you put that on
of
camera
this,
now.
Of doing this.
Yeah. See?
Anyway.
Right. Today we're going to talk about, should I buy or should I rent?
Which we don't want people to rent because obviously that's
the whole business.
That's all our business. But
yeah,
you know,
it's
harsh realities of things right now.
Well, it's interesting because you're seeing you have FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. People are just running into real estate, going, "Oh my God, I gotta buy. I shouldn't be renting. Renting goes to the other person's, to the landlord's pocket,
Right.
not to mine. You know, it's a good investment if I buy. Blah 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 blah." But when you really look at the numbers and you look at some of the financial pieces of it, you can make an argument like, "Hey, renting's not bad right now." As a matter of fact, before we kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of it, I actually just had a client recently. They're renting a small, it's just a boyfriend, girlfriend, renting a single family house, $1,500. It's not in a great location, but $1,500 a month. They were putting down 5% down payment, and they could afford it. It was okay, but their mortgage payment was going to be like $4,300 or something like that.
For how much more space?
Right, for not much more space. And so in my head, I'm going, and this is where it's challenging for us, right? We have to toe the line a little bit about you know how much we're pushing in one direction or the other. But you could make the argument there, like, why are you buying a house? You're $1,500 a month. Now, if your landlord comes back and says that you have to pay $3,500 a monmonth, all right, different conversation.
Then you can make the argument, but
yeah, $1,500 a month. I was like, wow. In the back of my head, I'm going, and you're hell bent on buying a house,
right? Well, I mean, obviously it depends, and I think the last few years, what was tough is I remember back to when we bought our first house, and the market we were in. I mean, interest rates were like 5.5% or something like that. But the market we were in, there wasn't all these other offers coming in. We weren't coming in over asking, so we were comfortable with what we were, going into it. But now these first-time home buyers the past few years have been just really either booted out of the buying pool or they just give up because
rates are 8%,
right? But at a certain price point too, they're like, I know a lot of people who are first-time home buyers like, okay, my max is like $450, like absolute max. And if they saw something that was like $450 or something like that, or $425, they're like, I don't even think I'm going to get it because people were coming in so much further over, and they don't have the amount of money to put down necessarily. So if they were tight to begin with, and they are renting something that's like $1,500, like you said, you want to toe the line and be like, yeah, this is a good investment. But at the same time, it's like they're really stretched, and it also leads to a lot more buyer's remorse too. And you don't want that.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, right, I'm pulling up an article, right, that's kind of talking about it, renting versus owning, and, kind of what's the difference, and, like what are the pros and cons of renting versus owning right now, and I think it's dependent upon your unique situation financially, right. and personally. If you're getting married and you're maybe going to have a kid, and you want someplace, if you're going to be in this particular home or this particular area for 5+ years, 7+ years, then you can make the argument that buying is probably better than renting, right? But if you're younger, you're still in your 20s maybe, and you're just getting out of college and you're just finding a job, and you don't want to necessarily be tied down to a piece of property unless you're thinking about it long term from an investment standpoint.
Right.
Right? Like I think with my girls, when they get out of college, I'm probably going to push them into buying like a 2-family or 3-family or 4-family somewhere where they can, maybe have a friend, rent out a room with them or have something somewhat of an investment there for them, but it still gives them some of that,
right.
that ability.
And you don't need all the space yet. That's the one thing I regret. I wish that, like after college, I'm like, okay, I'm going to live home for 1.5 years or whatever, 2 years. And then like, I'm going to be out at 2 years and I'm going to buy something. And somehow it's shocking to me because I was able to save more money then, like making barely any money, like working a couple of jobs than I feel like I can do now. For some reason you make more money. It's like you have less money, but you give yourself a certain amount of time. You're like, oh, I want to be out. And then we bought our first house. It was like small 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch. But I regret not buying, like waiting a little bit longer and buying a multifamily because then, rent out the other side. And, I look back on that all the time and wish we could have done that.
Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately in our area, that's become more challenging to do because the bar for entry is so high.
Yes.
One of the other topics that we should eventually talk about is, buying a piece of property with no money down or no money. I think it's a fallacy and a myth but it gets a lot of clicks, a lot of clickbait. Yeah, it's just, that's something we should probably dig into a little bit more. But, renting versus owning is, if you're renting, you're flexible, you're not tied to a particular house or a particular location. Generally the payment's a lot smaller. You don't have to worry about maintenance. That's the other thing that very few people talk about. Is when you're renting, you're not worried about mowing the lawn or fixing the siding or cleaning your gutters or
hot water heaters. The big ticket items that go.
Yeah, right. Things like that. Like water softeners and the hot water heaters and all this other nonsense. So there's some aspects of renting that are really good, and if you've got a good. And the other thing too that probably not a lot of people talk about too is if you're a good tenant for a landlord, the landlord is less likely to want to try to get you out,
right?
And the landlord is less likely to raise your rents going forward if you're a good tenant. I can't tell you how many landlords I talk to where they're just like, yeah, I've had this guy in here for years, he's awesome. Or this couple, they're awesome.
The ideal situation.
I don't know what to talk to. I don't talk to them. They take care of the place like it's their own, and it's been a great experience. I mean, you also have conversely the other side of it, which is they're a hot mess. The police have been there 3 times this week, and there's stuff all over the front lawn, and you have the other side of that too. But you obviously try to avoid that as much as you can. But when you're renting. You have a lot more flexibility. You have a lot more freedom. Generally you're paying less. So you should have an ability to save a little bit more for a down payment. There's some certain aspects of that are good. Owning a home, all right. Now you're kind of sticking your flag in the ground. That's yours now. You can do whatever you want. And the downside to renting is you can't really do anything to the property. It's just kind of paint and maybe some small cosmetic things. But when you own it, you can do whatever you want. You want to put a pool in the back, knock yourself out. You want to change the color of the siding, knock yourself out. You can do whatever you want to the house and personalize it to your liking. So sorry, that's my phone.
Red card. Red card.
Sorry. So. There's some good pieces of that. As it relates to our current environment, where we are right now, the average rent in New Jersey right now, what do you think?
$2,500.
Ooh, look at you, fancy.
Am I right?
Did you do some research before you came
I know
on?
things.
You know
I
things.
know things.
$2,495.
Yeah.
Roughly. If you look at, and that's probably for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Apartment, probably decent amount of space, probably 1,000, maybe 1,200 square feet,
right?
Which is not terrible. So $2,495. The average purchase price for a new home right now in New Jersey is, what do you think?
$675.
Oh no.
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 Lower?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, just under 500, like
Okay.
490-ish, 490 and change.
And is that just like they're running the gamut of all the purchases? in
Yeah, I
New
mean, well,
Jersey? Right.
Once you get past 195,
Right.
you're in
Yes.
cow territory.
So it's Sussex County. The Sussex County is so big, so they're like taking a lot of numbers from there clearly,
Right.
and also South Jersey because you know
right. Once you get past 195, it's completely
it's
different.
yes,
You
much
might
lower
as well
purchase price.
be in Alabama at that
I
point.
think it's like there's this black hole thing that happens where you like go to the end of South Jersey and then you're automatically back in Sussex County. You don't even realize it.
Yeah,
It's like an
yeah.
endless loop.
Yeah.
The Parkway.
Yep. Oh my gosh. So
So looking at that purchase price though,
on
is
a
it-
mortgage.
on
so
a mortgage
right now on that,
with
you got
with
7%,
even if you put
7.5%.
if you put 20% down, say you put
20%
20% down.
down, so you're looking at a $400,000 mortgage, 7.5% or 7%. I mean, you got to be close to $3,000
Mm-hmm.
on a payment, maybe a little bit more, or maybe a little somewhere right around $3,000 is where
Okay.
where it should settle out. Taxes. I mean, what are you talking about? Taxes? 12 grand, 10 grand, 12 grand, maybe 8.
Just for perspective, I told you I looked at that house the other another property the other day and it was 460
Right.
and with taxes being like around $8,000 all in it was like 20% down like for almost pretty much $4,000 a month. I'm like this is the same mortgage payment I have for an investment property that was twice the purchase price
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now. So I don't, it's tough. It's tough to make that decision when you're like young and you're in your 20s and it's like, do I want to just do the $1,500 a month, but then I can save, their $500 a month on top of that, or, dump my 20% that I was able to save, if you could even save that at this point, into a purchase price.
Think about it like this, right? So think about it like in this way, right? So 2,900, you have real estate taxes, let's call it 800. Mm-hmm. So now you're at 3,700, and you've got insurance now, which is going up. So that's probably $120 a month. So let's call it right under $4,000. Mm-hmm. So you're about $1,500 a month ish, one way or the other, in terms of mortgage payment
Right.
versus rent. $1,500 a month. I mean, that you can save a decent amount of money obviously over the course of a year. So that's 18 grand, right? And then, you could almost make the argument right now that renting is probably a little bit better than buying. Although, the one thing with a mortgage, if you're paying down principal every month, so you're kind of repaying yourself. You're getting the same benefits of a mortgage, and you own it, and you can do more with it. So I think it's probably at a 50-50.
You are, but it's tough because if you're not putting 20% down, you have mortgage insurance too. So you're not getting you're never getting that back. I mean, when you first enter into a loan too, like the first however many years, like how much are you really cracking at principal?
No,
So if you're not staying there long term.
No,
So, yes, you had your initial down payment that you put into it as you'll get
Yeah.
back as principal, but I don't know. It's kind of depending on people's certain specific scenarios. It's kind of like a tough argument to make to buy because you're not really cranking down too much principal if you're not going to be there long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
I think the challenge right now, I don't think renting is a bad thing right now because it does give you the flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It does give you the ability to save theoretically. So if you're younger, I think renting isn't terrible right now. But I would also say too, like, hey, buying real estate isn't a bad thing.
Right.
If you have the right mindset about buying and you're buying right now, I think you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, as rates, everybody's talking about it right now. Like, hey, rates are really high, and don't, you're not married to the rate. You can always refinance at some point
Right.
down the road, and all those things are true. But take a step back and look at it from a financial perspective for yourself. Like realistically, not only with a home, there's other expenses that come along with a home. It's not just the
That's not even getting calculated into your debt to income ratio.
right. It's not okay. Now you have
Internet, cable.
Well, though, I mean, you have to have that
electric.
have that in an apartment, but typically in an apartment, you don't have electric, you don't have water,
Right.
you don't have sewer, you don't have gas, you don't have garbage,
Snow removal or
yeah, yeah.
landscaping.
What if you buy a townhouse? Then you have association
HOA.
dues, and if you have a townhouse and you're only putting 10% down, and you have mortgage insurance, that $3,900 payment is probably more like $4,500 or
Right.
$4,700. So now the gap starts to widen. And now the rent really becomes a more competitive option for you, at least over the short term. I think long term, if your family situation is changing, like I was saying, if you're getting married and you're planning on having kids or having a family, then wanting to own a home and stick your flag in the ground and have your little piece of paradise is important too. It's just, I think that the whole owning versus renting thing is a lot more fluid than it used to be, especially for now, especially with COVID and what happened, everybody started moving all over the place. Like, hey, it would have been better off if you rented, because then you could have moved to different areas of the country that you would have maybe found and liked and said, oh, I want to live here, or I want to live there. I think that's the other aspect of renting that gives people
Right.
is a good pro or a good benefit. You can move around and find the area that you want to live and maybe have a family and do some things. So I don't know, but with mortgage rates as high as they are right now, it makes renting more appealing short term, but I think longer term buying is really going to be a better option, especially as rates come down. If you take that same $400,000 mortgage payment and bring that rate down, even just a little bit, now you're getting, you're compressing the gap between the two, and now you can, if your mortgage payment's only $3,200 or $3,000 versus $2,500, all right, now you can make the difference.
There's an argument there, of course.
Yeah, so then it becomes a better option to start looking at buying. But I think ultimately buying long term is a good thing. I wish I had done that earlier when I was younger too. But whatever.
So we were talking about the other day, like how much money we wasted when we were younger, and could have done so many more things with.
Listen, I've got a lot of photos and a lot of good experiences traveling around the world, but can't take that with you.
Lessons.
Yeah, no, lessons.
Yeah.
So I mean, renting right now is appealing. I think that's just a short term,
just a
glitch in the matrix
for the people maybe who can't find something. And I know it's frustrating for people who work in this industry, especially realtors who've been showing people a lot of houses, and then at some point the buyers are just like, you know what, we just gotta. It's like the phone call you never want to get. I think we're just gonna wait a little bit, and you're like, oh man, like I've been showing these people these houses. And I totally get that. But I think the renting, maybe short term, like it's an option to take some of the pressure off if you don't need to be moving in it anywhere like right away. And it's going to, maybe lead to a little less remorse. People jumping into something and they're like, oh shit, like I don't really know if I actually can afford this right now. Like we can, but we're stretching it. Or maybe they can afford the actual payment, but then they have all the other things on top of that.
Yeah.
That
maybe
they're not calculating into it.
Maybe look at like a 6-month rental.
Yeah.
Right,
Just
look at
short term.
something shorter term,
Yep.
so that you can get comfortable with an area that you're planning on moving into, or want to move into, or want to buy. It gives you some flexibility and some options. Kind of help you decide, where you want to be, right? Because you're coming out of the city, you're coming in from, Westchester or whatever. Everybody seems to be coming in from all different areas into New Jersey, but you don't know the particular towns. You don't know all the little nuanced things about, where you're going to live and what you're doing. But that may give you an option, or may give you an option to decide whether you want to be there or not. So you do 6
Right.
months, and then all right, I don't know, 6 months I want to go over here. Maybe Morristown isn't for you. Maybe Red Bank is. Maybe it's Montclair. Maybe it's I don't know.
In the meantime, you could
Sparta.
save. Then that's like $1,500 rent, but you can save a little bit of money, and then I know rent is rent. You're just putting it in the landlord's pocket, but it's a short window of time compared to the long rent. And I don't know. I've spent 6 months worth of rent easily on a lot dumber things than rent.
Yeah.
So
You know what? It's just, I think it's wise. If you're thinking about buying or thinking about renting, it's good to have open conversation with people. Maybe not necessarily your family, but maybe some trusted advisors or friends, or maybe it is some people in your family that you can trust, that you want to talk to them about it. Be open about your I mean, you don't need to get into every little
Right.
detail about your finances, but talk to them. Hey, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. Talk to some people, get some advice from other people that you trust or rely on to give you some advice. And I think you'll find that you'll get good information or good feedback. And help you make a more informed decision. And whether it's talking to a mortgage lender like myself, or somebody who's been in real estate forever, like you, and we can certainly give some advice to people and help.
Been in real estate forever.
Yeah, well, listen, we all can say that. Feels like we've been in it forever. All these ups and downs, but
It's a long few years.
But rely on some of the people that you know that have been in real estate, even if it's the realtors too. And that realtor is going to want to try to sell you a house, right? Or maybe they can rent it out too. But at the end of the day, you can rely on some of these people who have been in business,
before.
been through it before, and can kind of point in the right directions. As unfortunate as it is, sometimes renting is better than buying for people. Like that scenario that I expressed in the beginning. Why would you think that a $4,500 a month mortgage payment when you're paying $1,500 in rent is a good idea right now? Okay, maybe you're going to pay a little bit more, but at the end of the day, it's it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's what it is.
yes. All right. So if you like this episode, make sure you hit the like button. If you like what all the content that we're putting out, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.